it on? PZ. As I understand it, most animals fall into one of two big groups, protostomes and deuterostomes. And these kind of, at an early stage, develop the wrong way round. So the human mouth is homologous to a squid's anus and vice versa.
Right.
Is that an illustration of this hourglass thing? And how does it work? Because you had the Hox genes of the fly and of the tetrapod in the same order.
Let me see. Do I have my... It's like I salted the audience with you because that's my next slide. There's this distinction in the animal kingdom that there are these creatures that are like us. We're deuterostomes, and what that means is during gastrulation, the infolding tissues ingress at the site of the anus, and in the protostomes, they get the same movements, but where they ingress is where the mouth will form. And when you look at the adults, what you find is that in us deuterostomes, we have a dorsal nerve cord and a ventral heart. And you look at the protostomes, they have a ventral nerve cord and a dorsal heart. So they look like us upside down. We also know that when you look at the molecules behind it, so that's what's illustrated here. This diagram is just showing when we analyze all these different groups and we ask what genes are present and what they do, we can find very, very fundamental genes. Things like NKX 2.5, which is present in us, it's present in flies, it's present in squid, it's present in all these different creatures, and all of them it does exactly the same thing. It specifies the location of the heart. And there's a set of genes that are involved in the specification of the nervous system, a set of genes involved in the specification of muscle, the eye spot, those Hox divisions that I already mentioned. And they've all got them. And the cute thing is that when you look at the protostomes versus deuterostomes, the pattern of expression is inverted. They're upside down relative to each other. So what this suggests to us is that there was an indifferent stage in our evolution which preceded the separation of these two great lines of animals in which they were ambiguous about which side was up, probably. That it really didn't matter. You probably had a roughly tubular organism where it was probably a burrower, it would go through the mud, and it really didn't matter when you're digging whether you're upside down or right side up. And then what happened is certain members of this lineage went in one direction or the other, and they made an arbitrary decision about which way is up when up versus down became important, and we formed these two different lineages. At least that's the best possible explanation we got right now. Of course, these creatures have not been, this is a hypothetical organism. There is no fossil of this anywhere. There can't be a fossil of this. This would have been a creature with about the consistency of a jellyfish. And all we're going to find of it is traces, the traces of its burrows. But we can assemble this hypothetically by looking at the gene networks involved. Shared gene networks allow us to do a kind of molecular archaeology and decipher what organisms look like a long time ago.
Okay, next up, this gentleman right here.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed my article on uncommon descent. I just wanted to elaborate on a point I made there and defer further comment for my review of this talk. I was wondering if you would perhaps comment on the sheer lack of correlation or congruence between homology and developmental pathways. I can give you several examples of that. Gavin de Baer, for example, talking about structures as obviously homologous as the alimentary canal, and all vertebrates can be formed from the roof of the embryonic gut cavity in sharks, flora, in lampreys and newts, and so forth. It strikes me that the only way to get around this is to posit that substantial changes in development have occurred in the very early stages of development, and yet these changes in very early development would need to occur in very advanced organisms which have a lot of development preceding them. And furthermore, I would like to point out that it's the end form individual which is a unit of selection, and so these changes are unlikely to be evolutionarily fixed in the population. And finally, the problem that the changes in these very early sequences are likely to be catastrophic to the organismal fitness. Thanks.
Well, first let me ask you a question. Aren't you a little bit of ashamed to have been responsible for this bullshit? No, I'm serious.
No.
So you have no sense of shame that you've concocted this series of questions that are built on ignorance?
No, because I don't think it is.
Okay, well, let me ask you another question. What you've just done is classic creationism. You've thrown about a dozen different things at me in one question. Could you possibly be lucid enough to distill it down to one question?
Yeah. Could you just talk about the sheer lack of correlation and congruence between developmental pathways and homologous organs, how you would account for that in evolutionary terms?
Give me one example.
Yeah, I cited Sir Gavin de Baer, for example, in talking about structures as obviously homologous elementary canal forming in different manners.
Wait,
I'll give you another example if you want. I give you the neural tube, for example, as another example.
Okay, let's stick with the neural tube. What's the problem with the neural tube?
The neural tube, it's homologous throughout the chordates, and some of them its formation depends on the induction in the underlying notochord, but in others it doesn't. So, yeah, but I've actually got several papers here, which.
No, let him speak.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Okay, let me speak. I've got several papers here which actually document many of these examples. But I'd be very grateful if you could answer the question instead of deferring the issue.
Okay, well, the first answer is simply that the question is bullshit. This isn't a real question. I mean, for instance, when you look at neural tube induction, we know what molecules are behind this. We know the neural circuitry behind it. And we find homology in this neural circuitry in creatures as diverse as a Drosophila and a mouse. And you're saying that this homology of the neural circuitry is not present?
No, I'm saying that there is homology, but they're formed by different developmental pathways.
No, that's what I'm specifically talking about. The genetic circuitry that underlies the formation of the neural tube in its early stages is homologous between Drosophila and mice.
Maybe so, but they
Maybe so, but that completely invalidates your question. You're asking me to explain how they're different, and I just told you that they're not different. They're the same.
Yeah.
And then you say maybe so, but then where does your question go from there?
I mean, I've got dozens of papers. Actually, I've got 3 on me. I've got a dozen more at home, which actually document that what I'm saying is actually correct.
Wait, you cited Gavin de Baer. How old is that paper?
Sorry? I've got one from 2005.
No, the Gavin de Baer paper.
No, I've got Gavin de Baer on me somewhere. The one from Gerhard Schultz is from 2005.
Okay, so now you want me to read this paper. I'll tell you what, you can leave the paper with me and I will read it.
And you can blog about it on your Pharyngula.
If it's at all interesting.
Okay.
I kind of doubt that it is. And we'll just go on to somebody else with a question, but I will tell you that you should be ashamed. This is disgraceful.
Okay, PZ, if you've recovered from that skewering you just got there, here's this gentleman right here.
Cheers. My question is, why do you think evolutionary biology means such a target for creationists? I mean, you wouldn't, if you hadn't talked about general relativity, you wouldn't expect people to be here advocating intelligent falling from the Pastafarian church to the Flying Spaghetti Monster. So why do you think it is that evolutionary biology is such a target?
Oh, there's a couple reasons. And first of all, no, the physicists get this crap all the time too. Physicists who give talks on the Big Bang, for instance, constantly encounter creationists who utter this kind of ludicrous nonsense that we hear here about that subject. So it's not like I'm special, okay? But the other thing is that there are so many creationists who are willing to be daunted by the mathematics of physics, but think they understand biology. There are so many people who wander around thinking, oh, well, this is simple, this is obvious, and this is easy, and I've already got the explanation in my head because God did it. And so they feel like they can freely criticize evolutionary biology. These sets of questions up here were a beautiful example of this. This fellow doesn't know word one about basic biological concepts, yet he's really good at formulating long-winded questions full of all kinds of buzzwords and jargon and irrelevant references. That's really easy to do when you're targeting biology, it turns out. And in physics, at least, when somebody tries to do that, you get somebody who knows what they're doing. They just pull out their mathematical formulas and show them with a few strokes that they're an idiot. Me, I have to lecture for a whole hour to tell you that he's an idiot.
Who's next? Someone around here?
I fear this is one of the stupid questions, but
okay.
I'm not a biologist. I'm not a specialist.
You know, the thing is, stupid questions are okay if they're sincere and honest. Okay, if you really want to know, it's not stupid
you
anymore.
talked about the Hox genes,
yes,
and how they're all in the same order in all the different creatures and stuff. Now, if I were a mad fundamentalist creationist spamput, it would seem to me that you said that was strong evidence in favour of evolution, but it could also be argued that that is strong evidence that the designer was working to a template.
Okay, that yes, you just in isolation, you could say maybe the designer has a master plan, and he's in every creature first he lays out this framework with the Hox genes, and then he adds the widgets on top of it to make it its specific form. The thing is that we can look at the evolutionary relationships of these Hox genes. It's not like it's discretely different in one organism versus another organism versus another organism. We find differences within these Hox genes, and they show a pattern. They show a pattern of relatedness that is similar to the systematics of these organisms, the lineage relationships of the organisms. So it's a deeper comparison than I can possibly make with one slide. So yeah, what you would have to account for then is not only does the designer use the same template, but he carefully tweaks it with each lineage to make it unique in its own special way. At which point you might as well throw up your hands and say, why bother with this creator? Why not just use a natural mechanism? So yeah, there is no argument, there's no scientific argument I could make that would refute the idea that God flits into every reproductive event and tweaks it in some magical special way to follow a progression from the Cambrian to now. But it's indetectable, we don't see it, and all the mechanisms we see operating are fully consonant with natural processes. So why bother? We don't need magic angels doing tweakings of DNA. Okay.
Well, how you doing?
Very
I think
good.
your website's fantastic. So is Dawkins' website.
Thank
Can
you.
I ask
This Glenlivet is pretty good too.
Can I ask a totally different question? It's just been announced that there's a new College of Humanities set up in London by Anthony Grayling.
Oh, this new college, yeah. And okay, this puts me in a difficult situation. I know what you're talking about.
If you get offered a job there.
Oh, if I were offered a job there, would I take it? Oh.
And my second question is, surely this is good news for Darwinism. Do you not think that a lot of these youngsters and students should understand the processes of Darwinism and creationism would disappear, fade away?
Yes, so the hope is that more young people will adopt these ideas and they'll do better. About this new college that A.C. Grayling has set up, this is a little weird for me as an American because I heard this and it didn't sound controversial at all to me. And I understand among many students here, the fact that the tuition skyrockets with it is very pressing. I think the reason it's not of such concern to me is that in the United States, we have not had any kind of tuition protections at all. And we're kind of used to tuition going up constantly all the time with no caps, no ceiling. So that's just why it didn't bother me at all. This is like normal operating procedure in America, which means right away you're going to condemn it, right? Yeah. Would I take a position at such a university? That would, first of all, I've not been offered a position, so it's presumptuous for me to even speculate. It would depend entirely on the quality of the program. That, you know, I'm not going to say, well, you offer me a huge salary and I get to live in an exciting place like London instead of Morris, Minnesota. And no, it's what I'm most interested in is it a good place to learn? Does it have the right connect? Does it have a good library facility, for instance? Does it gather quality students? Does it have a quality faculty? I know right now everybody's talking about the celebrities like Dawkins and Grayling and so forth who would be working within it. But you know, realistically, they're not going to be laying the foundations of the classes. So it's cool to have them associated with it, but I'd really want to know a lot more about where it exactly was going. But otherwise, the whole idea of a liberal arts university, I'm behind it 100%. That's what I'm at right now. And I think learning history and philosophy and science and art are all important things for students to know.
Okay, right over here now.
Hello.
Hi.
First of all, can I just say that this is a really great night. I am delighted to be in the company of Mr. P.Z. Myers. And I'd like to say thanks very much to the Skeptics in the Pub guys for getting you here.
Thank you.
We touched on it briefly during the break. The internet is how probably, I suspect there are very few biologists here, and that's why they're here, is to come and see yourself, because they're very interested in your work. I suspect the reason most of us are here tonight is because we've come across your blog on the internet. The internet is making it very easy for crazy people to find each other.
Yeah.
And I would just like to expand on the idea, how do you keep your temper? How do you keep your sanity? In the face of what is going on in education in America, especially, how do you keep your temper? How do you keep your sanity?
You know I have a reputation for losing my temper on the web, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No,
I know this phenomenon very well.
Yeah, you know, I think that being able to express passion for an idea and being able to vent my temper verbally and in the written word is a great way to let off steam. And it's a great way to make it clear exactly what I think. So just that process of being able to say what I think makes me feel better.
I just worry that the crazy people dig in deeper when they're proven wrong, and the internet allows them to do that.
Oh, they always do. Yeah, yeah. The creationists will not ever be convinced by any of my talks. I can throw out all this data, all this information, and they don't give a damn because they've got a preconception, and what they will do is twist and distort whatever evidence you give them to fit whatever conclusion they desire. So no, I don't worry about them. What I hope for is that, you know, a few people here pick up on this information and see that, hey, there is an explanation for these kinds of questions, and maybe it's all gone in one ear and out the other tonight, but at least you know there's a place you can go to look and check on it and see, hey, there is an explanation.
Okay, we can only hope the truth will triumph. Thanks for coming to Glasgow, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, there's an arc of questions over here, so we'll start off here.
Hi. When you compare creationists to free thinkers, atheists, humanists, this sort of thing, they have very specific kind of religious beliefs. They tend to be fundamentalist Christians. They tend to only want to have sex for procreation, this sort of thing. Do you think that they are then limiting their reproductive success, and could it be too much to hope that eventually, in sufficient generations, they might be selected out?
Okay. No, because if you look at creationists, if you look at poorly educated Christians, they out-reproduce the intelligent, educated Christians and atheists alike. That as you learn more, what you tend to do, particularly as a woman, if you realize that there are better ways to live your life than pooping out a baby every year, you tend to choose the more desirable solution, right? So no, that's not going to work. The thing is that creationism is not genetically heritable. So we don't care. You know, there's this family in the United States, the Duggars. Have anybody seen this show? What is it, 18 and counting, 19 and counting, something? 19 kids. And, you know, what I see when I see those 19 kids is not 19 creationists. I see 19 children who could grow and learn and go to college and become part of the educated elite. And that's all that matters, right? In particular, I would say that we don't want to get into the habit of thinking, well, this is one group of people we can write off, because we can't. Those people are just as deserving of a good education as you know, the children of liberal, well-educated, wealthy, middle-class people. And they have just as much potential. So no, this is an argument of reason. It's not an argument. Yeah, I'm not gonna win this argument by going out and having babies with everyone here. Wait, you're a guy. Wow, new innovations in Scottish reproductive technology.
Hi, I'm just trying to avoid the speaker now.
Okay.
It's following in part what other people have been saying is that what do you think is a good way? You've got all these skeptics here and a few other people. But what's a good way? How can we actually communicate the idea that science can help, or you know, what's a good way to communicate, and that we could actually go away and do something that might actually help spread the word that there is another alternative out there, or is the actual scientific rationale there?
Okay, this is a tough one for me to answer in Scotland, because I don't know much about the Scottish educational system or anything like that. In the United States, you know, if I ask that same question in the U.S., I would say that what we need to do is improve public school education, especially in the earlier grades. We want to get the young kids, and what we want to do with those young kids is not start pounding facts into their heads. We currently have this program called No Child Left Behind in the U.S., which is teaching to the test, and it means teachers pound facts into kids' heads. What we want to do instead is we want to teach children to think critically, to be excited about the science, and to use experiment and observation routinely. They can do this. I've seen little kids do all kinds of cool experiments when they're excited about something, and we need to maintain that. Now, maybe the Scottish educational system is just like that, is it? The home of the Scottish Enlightenment? Yeah, you must be. Yeah, okay. We'll dream on. So yeah, what I would say is get the kids young, teach them to think. And that's the big one. Of course, the way you teach them to think, to get it down to very pragmatic terms, is you fund the schools at an appropriate level. And that means funding them all equally. As I just mentioned, you know, those kids of the creationists, the kids in the poor neighborhoods, they have just as much potential as the ones in the rich neighborhood. And when you set up a educational system that is divided and that doesn't fund everyone equally, that doesn't give everyone a chance, you are throwing a huge bit of potential away.
Okay, we still have plenty of time left, but we want to fit in as many questions. I see there's tons of hands going up all over the shop. So keep your questions as brief as possible, and we'll try and get through everybody's questions. So, Terry.
How do you strike a balance between convincing other people that creationists are wrong and convincing creationists that they are wrong?
Oh, most creationists can be written off, really. Seriously, you know, all the creationists who argue with me, I've discovered, are sitting there with this deep, rich body of preconceptions that have been inculcated into them from birth. They tend to be very, very religious, and they're not going to be talked out of it. That all we can hope for is that we will do two things. And one is we will look at the creationists and we will point and we will laugh hysterically. And we'll make them figures of shame to everyone else so they will not be people to emulate. And that, of course, we'll make the information available to everybody else. And that we hope that people who are more open-minded will be able to look at the evidence and come to their own conclusions. If you follow the evidence leads to evolution. It does not lead to creationism. And I'll go further and say the evidence leads to atheism. It doesn't lead to gods either.
Hiya. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you coming here to Glasgow
thanks.
in Scotland, and I hope you enjoy your whiskey as much as I do the Scottish whiskey.
Great stuff, yeah.
I just wanted to ask a brief question, which I'm guessing is on most of the people's minds in here today, is when are we going to see your book?
I'm traveling right now. I can't finish it. It's like, you guys keep distracting me. Shall I leave and just go? It's pretty much done. It's in good shape. The publisher, the editor, has sent me a bunch of comments that I have to clean up as quickly as possible, and I've been kind of doing it in odd hours in hotel rooms lately. And they have set a publication date for May of next year. So yeah. And what will the book be? I can tell you right now that the book, as I wrote it, was this huge regurgitation of everything in my head. It was kind of like the blog in that it's, you know, ejaculations, just boom. And what's been really useful is the editor has gone through and he's cleaned it up and he said, okay, we got to have a focus to this book. I understand that's useful in a book, right? That you know what it's about. So the book is, it's a book about atheism, and it's the parts that we're keeping right now are the parts that show the absurdity of religion. So it's, the way I'm kind of building it is, it's kind of like Dawkins' God delusion, only funny and aggressive. I expect the reviews will be scathing when it comes out, but that's okay. You're going to buy it all anyway, right? Right, okay.
Yeah. As you may have noticed, I'm a minister in the Pastafarian Church.
I noticed the pirate, yes.
Ramen, everyone. You've dealt with intelligent design theory. I just wanted to ask what, if anything, people are saying about unintelligent design theory. The theory that all the discrepancies can be properly explained by the fact that the flying spaghetti monster made a beer volcano first, and he was a little bit drunk when he made everything.
And he was also distracted by the strippers.
And
yes.
distracted by the strippers.
Yes, that, it makes so much sense. And like all religions, it relies on wishful thinking. Yes, I want an afterlife with beer volcanoes and strippers, and so yeah, okay, sign me up.
Okay, anyone else around? Yeah, okay.
Another question, which I guess is like the elephant in the room here. Have you tried Iron Brew yet?
You know, Stuart gave me some bottles. Where'd they go? I will willingly drink a sip of Iron Brew right now. Now, no, I've got it. I'm fine. But does it take two hands to drink it? What? It's got to be cold. Come on, I'm tough. I can. Although I am drinking it wrong, you know, in Australia, when I visited Australia, I had to try Vegemite. I was just as brave there. But I could at least coat a communion wafer with Vegemite. And I don't have one with me, or I would dip it into the iron brew. And so let's see. I think I'll stick with the Glenlivet. Wow, it kind of tastes like the medicine my mother would give me when I was a little kid. What's that? I didn't hear it. What?
Shit. It's like human piss.
You ever heard of Thunderbird?
Oh.
Yeah, much worse.
No, thank you.
Thunderbird with caffeine in it, basically.
I like it straight. This I'll stick with this. Right. I think if I lived in Scotland and had children, rather than the iron brew, I'd give them the Glenlivet every morning. Better for them, right? Okay, more questions.
To change the tone slightly, I had a bit more of a science question, maybe following on from the internet-based question. I was just wondering what you thought about the kind of the +1 system for publishing. Do you think it might open up, you know, the idea of publishing everything and letting the scientific community decide? Do you think it opens itself up to the idea of people cherry-picking bad studies that just happen to make it through the net?
No, I think open access publishing is essential, that we've got to change the model. My main gripe is that right now, most of the scientific research that's being published, the stuff that we are all paying for with our taxpayer dollars, is locked up behind paywalls that profit publishers, and you can't get at it. And it's also true for, you know, I'm at a university, I'm a researcher at a university, I have access to the university's libraries, and half the stuff that's published I can't read. I can't get to it unless I want to pay like $30 an article. There's other ways. I can go through interlibrary loan, which takes maybe a week to 2 weeks, and you know, this is the 21st century. 2 weeks is too long. 2 seconds is too long. I want it now. So there are serious limitations to access that we have to break down. The concern, of course, is will this diminish the quality of peer review? Will we end up with a lot of crap papers? And I would say right now that the big secret behind science that we all know that we don't talk about too much is that most of the papers that are published through the standard peer review system are crap already. That we have got, you know, many of you have heard of the LPU, the least publishable unit. Lots of people will just do enough experiment to get a few results that they can get published in a paper somewhere, because when it comes time to look at tenure and things like that, people just count papers. So, you know, I don't see a serious problem with going to open access. I think we want certain levels of peer review. So I'm sorry, I don't want the mob here to review my papers. I want my real peers, the people also in developmental biology, to review my papers. But I think all of you should have the ability to do post-publication review, which is becoming increasingly important in the internet age. Carl Zimmer recently published something, in Slate, I don't know if anybody saw this. He had a very nice article about how Twitter and blogs are changing the way science is being received, because there's this extensive post-publication review. Well, people are looking at these papers instead of just sort of blithely passing them by and saying, well, I'm a developmental biologist, so this paper on neuroscience, I'm not going to bother thinking about. Instead, what you do is you throw it out to the public, and then you find people who sit down and look at the paper and start nitpicking and going on the web and saying, hey, you know, this paper by Myers, look at this big error he made on this page. So it's making a lot of people uncomfortable, but I think it's a powerful tool that's going to improve the quality of the paper, not necessarily the paper that gets published, but the paper that will last and endure and get the attention of lots of people.
I'm next. Hello.
Oh, right behind me. Okay.
As a former developmental biologist, I'm really, really pleased to hear you say these things tonight and explain it to this audience. However, I feel I've got to agree with an American philosopher rather than an American developmental biologist, Daniel Dennett. He said, by the way, in England, I meant Britain and Scotland, of course, they already have a strategy for dealing with the evolution deniers, and that's to teach the problem of religious diversity in schools. So when my son comes home, he knows a bit about Buddhism, he knows a bit about Hinduism, and I think it's fine for you to attack these people. Bear in mind that they hold these views erroneously but sincerely. I think by calling them idiots, as Dawkins does, we're not doing them any favours. We need to teach them philosophy, the weaknesses of religion.
Yes.
Have you got any response to that?
Yes, I agree completely. I would love to see a comparative religion course taught to every high school student in America, and that's what. The problem is that people often get into these echo chambers of the churches. That when you go to church, you don't hear dissent from church, and so what you can do in a comparative religion course is you can teach them that Protestants believe this, Catholics believe this, Buddhists believe this, and they're all different, and you can sort of judge their merits on their own. It's an ideal, and the problem with doing it in the United States is that there have been school districts that have done it. We've got this constitutional separation of church and state, and it is not a violation of church and state to have a school teach a comparative religion course, so some schools do this. But the problem is that in just almost every case I've seen, the school gets this mandate to teach a comparative religion course, they look around, they say, okay, we'll go to the local preacher in town and have him come in and teach it. So you get the local Southern Baptist minister coming in and teaching Buddhism to the kids. And you know what he tells them. And it's not helpful at all. We can't just say, teach comparative religion. We have to say, teach comparative religion. Here are a set of standards that you have to meet in the instructors. Here's a set of standards in the quality of the curriculum that have to be met in order to do it. And that's hard. That's expensive.
Why is that not happening in America? I mean, it happens here, so why doesn't it happen in America?
Because I just gave you the magic word, expensive. The problem with America is that we have an incredibly bad system for funding our schools. Schools are all funded by local property tax levies, which means every couple of years it comes up, the school says, we're going to have to lay off half of our teachers if we don't get more money, and you have to ask all the residents of the area, are you willing to have an increase in your taxes in order to pay for good education? And then the Republican assholes all say no. No matter what, the Republican assholes may have kids in school, but they may have kids in private school. So they're not willing to fund the public schools. And they don't like taxes in general. So what happens is levy after levy fails and the quality of education drops. And so going to the school and telling them, hey, we'd like you to teach comparative religion, and they're saying, but we can't teach algebra because we can't keep the teachers. I know which priority I'd have. Let's get the algebra first.
Is this? Yeah. Okay, we're back up the back now with this gentleman right here.
Hi there.
Oh, okay.
As I met you earlier, PZ, I didn't come from a biology background. I was a philosophy undergraduate. But I have a tiny little 22-month-old toddler.
Uh-huh.
And she'll go to school in 2.5 years' time. And this isn't America. We don't have this horrible idea of being taught ID in school here.
So far.
Yet, so far.
Yeah.
But it's coming. We can see it. It's in my local town. There is now a state-funded Church of England school that teaches intelligent design. I went through a Catholic school system, which we don't need to explain that. It's fucked.
Yeah.
my parents give me lots of abuse for not wanting to put my daughter through that. I want to find a secular school that is good enough for her level of intelligence now that she's 22 months old and she's quite an advanced child. I want to find somewhere that I put her. How do we arm ourselves against this happening everywhere? How do we?
Well, you know, this is democracy. You got to vote, right? That's one important thing. Is make your wishes known in the voting booth.
Well, yeah. You can vote
otherwise,
against this.
Again, my lack of familiarity with the Scottish system is hindering me. In the United States, what I tell people to do is to go to school boards, go to the administration, go to the teachers themselves, and don't hold back. Tell them what you expect of them. Make it clear that there is a jerk parent in the district who will cause trouble for them if they lower their standards. So if you've got, okay, you're one guy, you wouldn't have that much influence. But, if you get two guys, you're getting there. If you get 3, 4, 5, all of a sudden you've got a voting block, and you're coming in at regular intervals and making life hell for the administrators of the school. They'll start paying attention. So yeah, in the United States, creationists are real jerks, and it works. They go in and they confront the school boards, the teachers, and the administrators. And we atheists, except for me, of course, and we secular people, we tend to be nice people. Again, except for me. And we let it slide, and you can't do that anymore. So stand up for good teaching.
Hello, sir. Oh, it's on. Hello. Sorry, thank you. I was lucky enough to come to Syracuse about this time last year, and you showed a wonderful picture of a billboard on your way to work with 22 weeks, I've got a smile and a heart.
Yeah.
And then you had the beautiful spaghetti monster of what it actually looks like of the fetus. I'm concerned at the moment because the wonderful coalition that we have, because we went to the voting booths and we voted for who we wanted and we ended up with this lot, are currently putting, they've removed the British Pregnancy Advice Service from their list and have got Life, which is a wonderful Christian right group who want to prevent abortion at all risk and weight. How do we go about, because this is more a problem in the States than it is here so far,
right.
How do we go about making sure that reproductive rights of women, choice, which is a sensible, rational ideal, what you want to do with your body should be up to you. How do we combat this sort of thing when there isn't a mandate and yet still the voting has ended up as it is?
Yeah, okay, he's picked another one of my obsessions. The pro-choice movement is just as bad as the creationists. Or I mean the pro-life movement, the people who, blame it on the Glenlivet. The pro-life movement really lies and distorts the developmental biology to make their case. So as he mentioned, there's another talk I've given where I get cranky about these billboards that are scattered all across the American countryside. They're all uniformly annoying because what they do is they do things like they say, oh, at 4 weeks, my heart started beating. And it's got this picture of this adorable 2-year-old baby there, with a big smile on his face, which, it's misleading in so many ways. So I've got a talk where instead I put a picture of what a 4-week-old baby actually looks like, and it looks like something you'd throw up on your plate or maybe find in an oyster, really hideous. And also it's an appeal to emotion, not logic, because who the hell cares when your heart starts beating? I like to point out that my zebrafish, their heart starts beating at 24 hours. Therefore, they're better than we are, right? So yeah, they're doing the same thing. They're lying about the science. They're lying about developmental biology in order to make a false case. In addition, any of you women who are active in the pro-choice movement know that they also lie about things like the consequences of abortion. I have heard this terrible lie that getting an abortion increases your chances of breast cancer, for instance, which is statistically false. It doesn't happen. But they spread this lie over and over and over again in order to dissuade people from getting that. We're also facing this problem where this is not being settled by rational debate. It's not being settled by the science. Where it's being settled is by evil assholes intimidating doctors. As I mentioned, I live in Minnesota, which is one of these rural states in the middle of the country. We're right next to North and South Dakota, which are even more empty and barren than Minnesota. And right now, there are no abortion doctors in the Dakotas at all. They've been scared away, chased off. What we've got is one doctor in Minneapolis who volunteers to fly into Dakota once a month to work at a clinic for women who need abortions. This is the situation we're in now, where it really doesn't matter what reason says. We've got this oppression from the so-called pro-life movements to shut down what is essentially important medical care for women. Women die because they don't get abortions, yet somehow we think it's okay to get rid of this knowledge from the community. So what can you do about it? Again, I don't know much about Scotland. How far down that path are you? I hope it's not quite that bad. No. Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay, that's an unfair restriction, but okay. Yeah, in the United States right now, the Republicans are actively working to defund every single program that permits abortions, and are doing all kinds of things like changing insurance laws to penalize insurance companies for providing insurance for abortions. So it's getting pretty bad there. Again, what I would say is you've got to fight. The people who are against abortion, what do? They go out and they picket, and they wave signs, and they yell, and they have bumper stickers. If you are pro-life or pro-choice, what do? Are you out there doing the same thing? You need to make a noise.
Okay, sorry.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay, we're going to have one last question because it's 10 o'clock and we're coming to an end. So
we're having fun.
Here. Sorry?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, one last question right here. Make it a good one.
See, that's worrying because it's not really a question.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, but this isn't really a question. It's answering some questions. Of all the parts of the UK, I think with regard to religious education, Scotland at high school level is way above the others. The subject is not religion, it's religion, morals and philosophy.
Okay.
It's compulsory to a certain level, but the students don't have to take an exam in it. And it's taught with science. It's a full philosophical education, which I think is brilliant. And you can tell, you see, that I'm not a Scot, unfortunately. So I think if we as parents bring up our children to think, and my children were brought up in quite a strict religious situation, but I taught them to question, because I cannot believe that if there is a God, he will give me a brain and expect me not to use it to question. Mm-hmm. I think what I believe is entirely my choice, but everybody has that freedom, and they must be encouraged and given the tools to reason to get there.
Right.
Your whole speech fascinated me because I'm a biology teacher. I came because of phylogeny begets ontogeny, which switched me on totally as an 18-year-old. Although I could see the flaws, it just made me question more and more and more and more. It's just, we have to keep open minds. I think that is the key.
Yeah.
I don't have any holes that big in it.
No, I would agree that, as was mentioned earlier, courses in comparative religion are really useful. I would not, for instance, advocate a course in atheism in public school. That, you know, we don't want to be teaching the conclusion. We want to teach people how to arrive at the conclusion for themselves. And so that means, yeah, teach Christianity, teach all these other ideas, and teach them how to think in general, and things will come out all right, we hope. You know, I really don't object to somebody deciding, well, I'm going to be a Christian because I've thought about it, it makes me feel best, and it best suits my personal philosophy. What I find really objectionable is the fact that so many people are brought up and indoctrinated in a religion, and they just simply go along with it because they've been told they've got to. And often they're afraid to deviate from it because they've been told about hellfire and various things like that. So, yeah, teach kids to think. That's all we care about.